This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Well, it's 1 o'clock. Welcome everybody to this live Q&A with Oliver Friesen, of course, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. I'm Mark Fairbairn from Stockbox. I interview Oliver quite a few times on the Stockbox platform, and I'll simply be hosting the Q&A today, fielding your questions to Oliver, of which a number have been sent in already. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope we've picked everything up. So we'll start by asking those questions first, and then we will open the floor here so people can unmute. There's a number of ways, I think, to do that. I think you can perhaps raise your hand. If you can't see that, then let us know, or type in the main group when it's appropriate, and we'll make sure you can be unmuted so you can ask your question. Or indeed, if you prefer just to type your question, that's absolutely fine as well. We'll pick that up. But Oliver is here today to answer the questions of shareholders. Of course, he is bound by rules of the London Stock Exchange, as any director is, but Oliver is here for you and will do his best, I'm sure, to answer in as much detail as he can. So thank you very much, Oliver, for joining. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Mark. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you, Oliver. Very good indeed. Looking forward to this. Thank you very much for your time. I know people appreciate it as well. So, I mean, shall we just perhaps start off by a bit of an update? Because, of course, things were moving quite swiftly on Garfield, weren't they? Only 3 days ago, the 25th of March, you announced the ground magnetics have started, in your video on Twitter there. I know people have seen that. Explains very well how that works and what's going to happen. But has it started? How are things going? Have you had any feedback from the guys on the ground?
Yeah, so we posted a photo, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, but weather's fantastic, which is great because it just means these surveys can happen a lot quicker than if the weather was poor. So it's going really well. The video I put out should be helpful in explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the outcome looks like. But yeah, it should be done in the next day or two, probably, based on the current pace that they're moving at. So that just means we get the results quicker and we can move on to the next steps quicker as well, which is what everyone wants us to do.
Yes, indeed. And the results that you'll get, it's, I think using the word heat map is not perhaps the correct term, but it's sort of that magnetic map, isn't it? That's the result you'll come out with. It'll show you anomalies that you might want to go and explore further.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, it will look effectively like a heat map, with the magnetic highs likely telling us that there's something magnetic at depth, which in this case we're hoping is a causative porphyry, which is bringing up all the copper, silver, and gold that we're seeing at surface.
Good, because of course you have those copper in soil anomalies. So really, you want to find that. I think you called it a porphyry center.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's what we're looking for.
And that will show very clear on the heat map, will it, when it comes back?
Yeah. So the porphyry center is really the prize here. What you're seeing at surface is just sort of fluids and mineralization that's kind of fingering off the main porphyry source. But yes, the heat map, in a perfect world, your magnetic highs will be related to porphyry centers at depth, which are feeding all the fluid at surface. That's the real prize that we're targeting here.
Okay. And do the guys just simply walk the lines, just go straight, turn around and come back, or are they stopping if something flashes up on the technology?
No, they're really just motoring on and trying to get those lines done. They are geologists, or they have a technical background. So what I'll tell them, or what I'll instruct them to do, is if you see something interesting at surface, certain, adits or old mining workings, or malachite staining, things at surface that we're kind of interested in, then make a note in your GPS. But we've walked the ground with professional geologists, just focusing on the rocks and the alteration. So we tell them just to do because effectively these guys are combing over the entire property, from north to south. So if they see anything of interest, just mark it. And if it's a duplication of a previous result, that's fine. But if not, oftentimes you can find some new stuff that can be helpful as we continue to push it forward.
Okay, so is it almost like they start in the morning, they take a packed lunch with them in the rucksack, walk, and then keep going all day, sort of thing? Hopefully, the weather is favorable.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, in the video I put out, I highlighted that I've done these surveys myself. We used to run them through the company that I own. So yeah, it's great. You just you put a podcast on, or you put a playlist on, and
Okay.
if the weather's nice, you just kind of walk in the sun all day and explore the mountains, which is kind of great. But yeah, it's an interesting job, and when the weather's good and the mountains aren't too bad, then it can be quite nice to be out there just walking around.
Yeah, well, the picture certainly looked very nice, and I mean, you mentioned on the video there about the terrain and it perhaps looking hilly, and it does look hilly. I mean, but from your point of view, it's not terrible. It's easily walkable, and access wouldn't be an issue to concern.
Yeah, no, it's I can send some photos. Maybe I'll post some at some point of some lines or some areas that I've explored in Northwest BC and Alaska, which are probably 4 or 5 times more steep. So yeah, I mean, it's not, obviously there is flatter ground out there, but in terms of kind of logistics, I mean, this is what I would describe as a dream project.
Right. Okay. Good. We've got a few questions on Garfield. Just before we get on to that, because of course, let's just get a quick update if we can on Pilot Mountain, because the recent news that came out that you did the placing, of course, and you announced the planning of the first drill campaign. So that is all funded, indeed, from the placing that you completed. You want to go on and basically test previously untested targets. The Porphyry South target may represent what you call the porphyritic intrusive body. The copper potential also will be tested. I guess the garnet will be tested as well. But in theory, you're finalising the contract now, and you want to have it signed before the end of March. So I mean, you've got one day.
Well, maybe it's already signed. I can't deny or confirm that. But yeah, that's the next step here is signing that and then announcing it, because that kind of really locks us in here. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting. I mean, it's funny. The main comment, or one of the main comments I've gotten since we listed, is, okay, well, when are you drilling? When are you drilling? Well, I've been involved with 50 plus big drill programs in my career, and it's so important to not rush into it, and to it sounds cliched, but to measure twice and cut once, and that's what we've done. So that means that when we actually do go drilling as an investor or observer of the company, we've put in the work to ensure that the holes that we're drilling make sense and are going to add value. So now I can officially say that we are working towards getting this drilling program started here. It will be the first one undertaken by Golden Metal, but we're in such a great position now to be undertaking this work. Whereas if we had rushed into this 3-4 months after list and kind of appease the market, so to say, you probably wouldn't be getting the results that we're hopefully going to achieve with this program. So I'm really excited. I love drilling, especially when you've done the groundwork to get yourself in a position of readiness for a really transformational program.
Excellent. Well, let's get on to some of the questions. I do see there's one hand up at the moment, but we will come to the floor at the end. We'll just get through I think there was perhaps 9 or 10 questions sent in advance. So we'll start going through them. And the first one, talking on drilling on Pilot Mountain, it's when do you think you'll be drilling at Garfield?
Yeah, well, great question. Drilling at Garfield. I mean, if you've watched the video that I posted, which was sort of a case study of sorts for the discovery of a copper porphyry I was directly involved with, it there's multiple ways for this to progress. We've done the soil sampling, we've done the rock sampling, we've done the mapping. Everything is pointing to something potentially very significant. So now what we do as geologists and as a team is we look to add additional data sets, and depending on what those tell us, we can make informed decisions about what the next steps are. In the case of the case study that I mentioned, we did a magnetic survey, we did an IP survey, and both of those surveys pointed to a very discrete and obvious drill target, which we drilled and made a significant copper porphyry discovery. So We know there's a lot of smoke, is what I call it, at surface. I mean, we're seeing incredible copper, silver, and gold grades across a very large footprint. We're seeing the coherent soil anomalies, which is what you want to see because it's giving you continuity of these zones. And the next big step here is this magnetic survey, and that is really going to tell us what the potential subsurface makeup of the area could look like. And like I said, we're looking for those porphyry centers. So when are we going to drill Garfield? I can't comment until I've seen the results from the survey that's ongoing. Typically, companies will do the magnetics and then maybe one more geophysical survey and then launch into drilling. But until I see the magnetics, I mean, if there's a very clear, robust porphyry center looking target, then we could confidently move into targeting to drilling. But if it's still a bit unsure and we think we know what we're seeing, but if we can go and spend an extra, say, 50,000 pounds refining the areas that we're interested in before we go and drill, I would happily do that, because if it means we're going to get closer to a discovery hole, then if you spend the extra 2-3 months and the bit of extra money, it's well worth it in my experience. So it's I'm kind of dancing around the question, but like I said, until we get the magnetic results, I can't comment. But what we're hoping to find there will get us a lot closer to drilling. And the great thing about Garfield is we could do RC drilling, which it really helps with the cost. So if we can identify some really compelling targets, we can go in there with a budget that's, a fifth of what a diamond drilling budget would be, and test a lot of these targets with RC. So that's something we're looking at as well, as RC drilling, so we can stretch the budget further, so to say.
Good. Well, that leads us very nicely into our next question. Now, you say you want to wait for those results to come back. Well, the question is, do you have an approximate duration on the survey and how long it takes to process and turn around a map?
Yeah, so the processing doesn't take too long, as long as the data is all nice and clean and there's kind of no anomalies or kind of weird artifacts in the data. So we work with the same geophysical company out of Vancouver. I've worked with the same geophysicist for my whole career, which is great because we have a good relationship, and I can kind of get him to bump our things up in the pecking order. So the survey should be done in the next couple of days here. And then immediately that data gets delivered to our chief geophysicist, and it gets processing. So it doesn't take that long. We could potentially have results in 1 to 2 weeks time here. And then obviously we need to take our time to really understand them and digest them. And then we get them out to the market as soon as we can. And in that release, we'll announce kind of what we found and what the next steps would be based on the results we've seen.
Okay, good stuff. Now, this is a question that's come in. It's off the back of your video, and it's difficult to tell from the video, but do you reduce spacing from 100 meters to 50 meters around what potential, what are the potential early targets to improve on the accuracy of the data, or is 100 meters generally sufficient?
Yeah, great question. It depends. So have been involved with surveys where we've done 25 meters spacing. And the reason you'll do super tight spacing like that is when you're looking for structure. So in an epithermal deposit, when you're looking for kind of narrow 3-4 meter wide veins, and you need the accuracy across that very small structure, that's when you do 25 meters. In the case of what we're doing here, because the targets are so big, really, I know that sounds a bit rampy, but truly the targets are very, very large. With the high grade zone alone, I think I did a comparison between the size of that soil anomaly and between the one where we made the discovery in Northwest BC. The porphyry center that we drilled and made the discovery at was about 300 meter wide soil anomaly. At the high grade zone, we have 1.5 kilometer wide soil anomaly. So because of the size of the target, I mean, if our soil anomaly was 100 meters by 100 meters, yeah, I'd probably go in there with 25 meter spacing on the magnetics. But if I was looking at a target that was 100 by 100 meters, I wouldn't be that excited about it. But we have something very big here. The targets are large. So if you can imagine, if you run 100 meter space lines over a 1.5 kilometer wide target, that will give you with ample accuracy. What you can also do is you can go in and fill in after the fact. So if we're seeing some really interesting structures and want better resolution over certain areas, we can send the same guys down and they can just walk the opposite line. So if there was 100 meter spacing, you just shift that whole grid over 100 meters and then you end up with effectively 50 meter spacing. But because the targets are so big, that's why we're going with 100 meters. And, the geophysicist and myself will sit down and we'll run through the various scenarios, the targets, the sizes, and then we define a survey based on what we think we're going to see there. But it's a great question. Yes, 50 meters, very, very plausible way to do it. But because the targets are so big, we went with 100 meters.
Okay, good stuff. Now, do you consider it would be value for money to drill Kibby Basin South to test the lithium brine potential? I realize it would be costly due to the depth involved, but if successful, it could provide funds to progress other more compelling projects. Value may be maximized whilst the neighbours are still in dispute and unlikely to progress their Kibby Basin claim.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that we go back and forth on as a management team, what to do with that one, because it is a really, really compelling target. And based on the geological facts that I have right now, and obviously, I need to caveat this and say until we actually drill it and confirm it, we don't know what's down there, but based on the facts, it looks like that conductor is probably a lithium brine, which is obviously really compelling. So how do we go about pushing that one forward? It's I would describe it as a good problem to have, which is, we've talked about Garfield, we talked about Pilot. I mean, those, Pilot is without a doubt a standalone asset. Garfield is looking like it could be a standalone asset. So it's about not spreading ourselves too thin as a team. We know the value of our portfolio. I mean, Golconda, again, that's probably gold's. I just saw gold's at 2,200.
Unbelievable.
And this is one of the better gold assets I have come across. I mean, this is the first asset we brought into Golden Metal Resources. It's the reason the name is Golden Metal Resources, because these Carlin deposits are so transformational when you find them. So I'm kind of going off topic here, but what I'm trying to get at is, we need to remain somewhat focused as a business. If there's the way I look at some of these other assets is if we can find a suitable partner who can come in and fund it and earn into these assets, that's a good outcome because it keeps the exposure to the upside for our current shareholders, but also allows us to focus our efforts on Pilot and Garfield, where we're currently experiencing the best return on our exploration dollars. Mm-hmm. So long story short, I love the asset. It needs to be drilled. If a hole is drilled to say 900 meters depth and finds a lithium brine there, I mean, that's a massive discovery. So that's why it intrigues us. We have what I consider to be the cat by the tail here with Pilot Mountain and with the tungsten and the strategic nature of it right now. I mean, everything is literally aligned here on Pilot Mountain. So because of that, we're kind of focusing right now on pushing that forward, and then obviously Garfield alongside. But we're open-minded. We're commercial. We're looking to do deals that are in the benefit of shareholders. So it's a great question, one that every board meeting we bring it up and we're kind of back and forth. But I think ultimately, looking for a good partner would be a great outcome there. But if the money was there, if there was interest, we could certainly drill that hole ourselves. I mean, it'd be logistically a very easy hole for us to drill. Because with our drilling company on Pilot Mountain, it's about 3 miles away. We could have them go line up there and drill that sucker. So lots of really good options here, but just long and short of it is we need to try to remain focused on the task at hand and the assets that are moving up the value curve the quickest, I guess you could say.
Indeed, and you mentioned gold. I mean, it's 22.11 at the moment. It's I've been watching it every day for a while, and it's unbelievable to see where that's going. And you've got at the same time, you've got the major indices in the United States making all-time highs. So yes, sort of conflicting signals there. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what it really means, but still, it's good for investors in gold anyway, and for yourself as well. You mentioned perhaps getting a fun sort of an earn-in perhaps with Kibby Basin, but would that, and then you said sort of Pilot Mountain, Garfield potentially stand alone. I mean, the next question that came in here, this is more longer term vision here, but with the primary assets being both Pilot Mountain and Garfield, where do you personally see GMET taking both assets to, and what are some realistic long-term time scales? And then do you want to sort of prove up and sell on or carry through to production? And if it's production, is it solo or joint venture deal? So again, it's obviously longer term this, but I guess your musings on this and any kind of milestones along the way.
Yeah, so let's just talk about Garfield first. Garfield, we need to make a drilling discovery. That's the focus right now. So when it comes to questions about monetizing Garfield, I don't even really kind of have those thoughts in my head yet, because we need to make a discovery. And the reality is, if we do, because of the size of the targets, it's in Nevada, it's porphyry exploration. I mean, every major mining company is looking, literally everyone is looking for copper porphyries right now, and no one is making copper porphyry discoveries. So the key there is to continue to advance this one. It's moving very quickly up that value, that Lassonde curve. And obviously, if we are able to make a drilling discovery, then all bets are off, and we'll kind of have the pick of the litter as to what we want to do with it. But we need to make a discovery first. Signs are obviously very encouraging, and it's the reason we're doing more and more work. But that's the next key step here, is to make a drilling discovery and to say definitively we found a porphyry of X size with X grade, and then we kind of have our pick of the litter with how in demand these things are. Pilot Mountain, let's focus on that one now. Mm-hmm. That's a different kind of kettle of fish, which is, we know what's in the ground. I mean, we have a resource which we can confidently point to, which says we have 35,000 tons of contained tungsten, which is the largest tungsten deposit on U.S. soil. So the discovery has been made there, and the government is very, very interested in what we have defined right now, because the U.S. needs domestic tungsten, just full stop. So how do we monetize this thing? Well, we need to continue to de-risk it and continue to add value there. There's obviously companies interested in the asset as it stands now, but we wouldn't get full value for it right now, which we think is much, much higher than what it's currently being valued at in our portfolio. So, how I just approach these things, broadly speaking, is, our goal is to de-risk the asset, right? Continue to add value, continue to, all the question marks that remain, continue to answer those question marks to the point where a mining company says, okay, this is, we have enough confidence now, because they're pretty risk adverse mining companies. They don't take big shots like us junior mining companies do. So once you get to a certain point where they go, okay, yes, all this has been checked off, we'll come buy it off you now for a premium. And that suits us perfectly, because we can take a few more risks. But ultimately, the goal here, I think, if I could kind of play this out or game this out for everyone as to how I hope and think this could transpire, is we continue to advance the asset over the next maybe year to 2 years, answer a lot of the questions that a major mining company would ask. And then at that point, we sell it. And we get a buyout for the asset for a premium of the NAV or the NPV, which we hopefully will be able to define with a PEA or a PFS. So that's the ultimate goal here, because that could be a huge home run for our investors and for myself personally, who's invested in this business. There's other ways to skin the cat, so to say, which is, we could JV it out, we could keep a royalty, we could put it into production. I mean, these are all things that we are open-minded to. But I'm a shareholder. I don't take much of a salary. So at the end of the day, I'm looking to maximize the return to shareholders. And I tweeted about that today. It's not to make comments about other companies, but it's sad to see a lot of companies who just clearly are not aligned with shareholders, and shareholders are waking up on a Tuesday morning and looking at the releases at 7 a.m. and going, oh crap, that's not good. This is not good. Clearly this management team is not aligned with what we're doing. So that's a bit of a side kind of point there. But what I'm saying is I'm a shareholder. I've put hard money into this company, and I'm looking to get as much money back to shareholders in the shortest amount of time. And that's what I'm looking to do here. So we're open-minded, we're commercial. The kind of the first scenario played out is one that I would prefer, and one that is kind of most likely, I would say. But we're going to continue to de-risk, add value, and look to deliver the biggest return to our shareholders. That's at the end of the day, that's what I'm here to do.
Good. Thank you for that, Oliver. So on Pilot Mountain, you've got that sort of government interest there. You want to continue working on it to demonstrate to the majors. Ideally, and obviously no one's going to hold you to this. This is just a bigger vision things. In sort of 2 years' time, you want to be in a good position with that project to seriously advance that next step, whatever that might be. You said with Garfield, you've got to make that drill discovery. So I mean, obviously that depends on luck, doesn't it, as well? And well, more than luck, you've got good planning as well, good targets. Any kind of milestone timeline targets on Garfield?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of to the original answer I gave earlier, which is we need to get these results. This will tell us a lot about what the next steps are going to look like. We should have these results in probably a week to 2 weeks. And then either the targets are very clear or we want to continue to refine them a bit more. And if that's the case, we'll have the next group of consultants or geophysicists on site to push that forward. We're not wasting time here.
Okay.
I mean, we've moved this thing so far along in 6 months' time here, and you know, I want to see what's there. That's my ultimate goal. And if it's there, fantastic. I mean, we're all going to do incredibly well. If it's not, there's still so much other value in the portfolio, and my job is to go and test these theories. And if they're there, fantastic. If they're not, that's the risk that we take investing in these companies. But the great thing about what we have at Gold Metal is if we don't find something at Garfield, well, the majority of the value of the company right now is in pilot and what we're doing there anyway. So the downside risk, in my opinion, is quite limited, which gives me that extra flexibility and confidence to go and test these other targets, knowing that we can drive significant value at pilot. So timelines, we're just pushing this thing as quickly as we can, and we're not wasting any time. We're getting the next guys on site. We're looking to answer these questions, which is there a significant porphyry down there? And obviously we hope that is the case.
Okay. And do you have a cost plan in mind then for both Pilot Mountain and Garfield to where you want them to be in the next sort of 1 to 3 years?
Like, what's it going to cost to undertake all this work?
Yeah, well, either what's it going to cost, or do you have have you sort of thought about it? You know, do you have a plan to deploy capital in a prudent manner?
I mean, yes, that's what we've done since day one. We've been very prudent about spend. I mean, the benefit, not to toot my own horn here, but I come from an exploration background. So I spent 10 years running a company, carrying out all of the surveys and drilling that we are doing across the portfolio. So the company that I own, we were known across Canada for being the lowest cost operators for drilling. So we were always prudent. We were always looking ways to be really efficient with how we spent money on the ground. So that means I take that same skill set to what we're doing here at Golden and making sure that the money that we raise goes as far as possible. So when it comes to budgeting for Garfield, I mean, everything we've done has been, as low cost as possible, just trying to find methodical ways to really squeeze the exploration dollars as much as we can. The magnetic survey we're doing now, it's, what does it cost? It's about 15,000 pounds, 20,000 pounds. We get preferred rates on that, and we plan a survey and do it logistically in a way that we can keep the cost low. And then next steps, like I said, we don't know what they're going to be until we have these results. But another thing I mentioned earlier is we can RC drill for about $100 a meter. So that means we can drill, say, 1,000 meters, do the math, not very much. And that gives us a lot of holes to go and test what could be down there. So that's kind of how we're working through budgets with Garfield, trying to make sure that the majority of our use of proceeds go towards Pilot Mountain, where we really think we have a cat by the tail there. I apologize for all the cat analogies. I realize it's probably 2 or 3 now. But with Pilot Mountain, we've raised that 750,000 pounds. That was with a strategic who wants to see us continue to advance pilot. So that money is going to go towards, we've announced this, mostly towards drilling. And then also there's a very key permitting step that we're going to announce or talk about more in the not too distant future. So that will be part of the use of proceeds. And then obviously the next stages of exploration at Garfield we included in that. We obviously have the existing cash balances as well. So we're in a very good spot financially to carry out all this work. And obviously there's other funding scenarios that we've discussed with the market that we're pushing forward in the background as well, which would provide potentially quite a significant amount of capital to really unlock a lot of value here.
Well, again, on funding, that leads very nicely into the next question there, because you've, of course, got traditional funding, you've got government funding, which you've talked about there. We hear quite a lot recently that the market's very tough. It's difficult to get capital raises away. Are there other funding options that you can consider here? The question is, other juniors are targeting low-cost early production to get some cash flow into the business. Does Golden Metal see any opportunities for this?
Honestly, no. I've thought about it, and I know some companies do it. It can be challenging to do that and to execute it, in my opinion, especially when it comes to smaller scale mining. That takes up a lot of time, and in the right scenario, it can deliver some near-term cash flow, which can help with certain costs. But worst case, your costs are higher than you think they are, and it doesn't quite work out that way. So I have mixed feelings about going that route. There's certain pathways that I think make sense. I mean, for instance, our parent company, Power, that GSA deal, that makes sense to me. I think it's low risk, but also it could generate some really nice cash flow based on what they're doing there and some contracts they could sign. When it comes to going out and actually going to do small scale mining, that's less of interest to me because I'm looking bigger picture. I want a bigger prize. And if we're looking to kind of, scrape $50,000 a month to help us fund this stuff, then I'm not as focused on delivering the ultimate goal, which is a huge return. So the reason I can kind of say that with a bit more confidence is because of the other funding pathways that we have accessible to us. So the government funding, I've talked about that. I've discussed the data points. I can't talk about specifics in the background, but obviously as a company, we have confidence in this pathway forward based on the data points and based on everything else that's kind of transpired in a macro sense when it comes to tungsten. So that's obviously something that we're really pushing towards, and we're working very hard in the background to get that all put together, because that, the amount of money that we could access from the government to fast track this project, I mean, I would have to operate for 10 years in a small scale operation to make up that amount of money. Whereas I can just do the methodical things with the government and really highlight to them, hey, this is the only tungsten project of material value in the US. By time I can spend a tenth or a fifth of the amount of, a small fraction amount of time I would need to deliver that same return or that same amount of capital to the business if I were to go in small scale mine. So because of that, it's a bit of a privileged position to be in. If I was a gold company and was unloved and there wasn't that pathway to strategic non-dilutive grant funding through the US government, I would probably look at it a bit differently. But because I know what we have and I know the significance of it and I know the potential outcomes here on that front, it gives me the confidence to say, let's focus on bigger picture here, which is getting government money in or raising with strategic people who understand what we can do here with Golden, and then really focus on delivering that huge return, which we're all invested in the space for.
Well, I just want to pick up on the government funding because it's of course been mentioned a couple of times here. So I have to ask the question on a risk point of view. What if that doesn't come off? I mean, how likely is it to come off? I know you're taking it very seriously. You appointed, I forget the name, that lady in the company to really go down this route. I do want to ask you to give a sort of your percentage scale, but you probably can't give me that. You're 1 to 10. But I mean, is there a risk here if a government say, "Oh, actually, no, we're not going to do it"?
I mean, there's a risk with everything. Obviously, I know there's a lot that I can't say when it comes to government funding. What I can say publicly is look at the data points, go to our presentation and look at the first slide. There's a bunch of other data points which I could, provide verbally if people reach out to me, which I think further strengthen the position that we're in. I can't comment on percentages. I know what the percentages are. I know everything that's going on in the background. Based on those data points, as anyone observing the business could probably would lead them to believe that we're obviously confident. There's no guarantee. That's very important, but we're confident. We know the timelines as well. So we know where things are at and where they need to be and what the next steps are. Everyone's trying to ask questions, but all I can say is it's ticking away in the background. And the data points continue to stack up in our favor, and what we have in the ground is getting more valuable by the day, not less valuable. So, we can bring in capital now, or we have capital now to deploy, which gives us the time to bridge the gap between when we could potentially get funding. But once again, I'm kind of dancing around the question, but it's the data points are the data points. We're very confident. We're in a very, very unique position. We're in one of probably the more unique positions of any company in London here with this asset and what it means to the U.S. national security. I mean, that's the key here. United States national security. That's the implications that this project has. And when you talk about U.S. national security, that's serious, right? Because the government doesn't mess around when it comes to that kind of stuff. They put the money into the projects that ultimately give them the heightened sense, or not the heightened sense, but that further bolsters their national security interests. And that's we're in a different league when you're talking about things like that. And tungsten, with its use in various things, also in the military as well. We know what we have, and we're going to continue to push those conversations in the background and push those things forward to hopefully deliver here for our shareholders. And in the meanwhile, we're going to continue to raise or use the money we have and the money that we raise at a premium to really unlock what we think could be a lot of value in the portfolio with drilling at Pilot Mountain.
Okay, well, thank you, Oliver. I'm down to the last couple of questions here that were sent in before. So if anyone listening does want to ask anything else or follow on to anything that's already been asked to Oliver, just put the little hand up icon on the Telegram there. It'll come up and I will see it. We can unmute you, or if you'd rather, just type in the main group and we'll pick it up there. But the last sort of couple of questions here. So this comes back to the Kibbe Basin and Golconda and Stonewall, actually. What's the yearly expenditure to maintain these licenses? And have you considered disposing to further fund and focus on the primary assets? Or is there a plan in place to put a bit of money into the ground? I mean, we talked a little bit about Kibbe earlier, and you're still sort of debating what to do there. But do you know what the yearly expenditure is? And would you consider disposing of them and focusing on the core?
Yeah. So the great thing about Nevada is everything is annual claims. So I know a lot of listeners are probably familiar with, say Australian licenses, where you have to spend an increase in amount each year to keep those claims or licenses in good standing. That's not the case in Nevada. As long as we pay our claim fees each year, we can keep those assets without spending a dollar on them. So we kind of answered it in an earlier question, which is we're looking at potential JVs for some of the other assets in the portfolio, which would allow us to focus time and money on the task at hand here at Pilot and Garfield. So that's kind of the focal point. In terms of disposing, like, would we ever drop the claims? Absolutely not. The holding costs for Stonewall, Garfield, and Kibbe are probably, I'd have to actually look at the table, but it's less than $25,000 US a year. So that's say 20,000 pounds. We can just pay that every September, and we keep those claims. I mean, there's 20,000 pounds a year, or the value that we could potentially extract from any of those assets. I mean, it far outweighs the cost benefit analysis to keep those things in good standing and find ways to monetize those when the timing's right.
Okay. And are you aware of any projects similar to Pilot Mountain in terms of resource size, grade, in the United States or in the rest of the world? Are there any lessons learned, good or bad, from similar projects that can be implemented at Pilot Mountain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the thing about, and a lot of times when I'm on calls, people will go, "Are there any analogs? Can you point us to any other assets?" And the challenge with that is there's so few assets in the Western. Sorry, no, I shouldn't say that. There's the market is just controlled by China and Russia, and when it comes to Chinese mining, we, as a Western citizen or a citizen of the Western world, we don't get access to information about those assets. So 86% of total global supply comes from China. We have very little transparency into how many mines that comes from, what the mines are doing per annum. We get the little tidbits here and there. Like we just saw that China has actually started to curb their exports per annum in 2024. So something is going on there where they're going, we're going to either we're not producing as much, which is probably a likely outcome, or we don't want to give the Western world as much tungsten as we have been in the past. So it's not a great answer because there just really isn't that many comparable assets because they're all in China, and that's the opportunity. Is we're looking at something where we need the Western world needs tungsten assets, and we're in control of one of the very few that exists. I know there's a great asset in Canada. I think it's the largest and highest grade asset in the world. It's a very important one for the future global Western economy when it comes to, when you look at the demand coming from fusion and defense, great asset. But I've been up to that part of the world. It's about 500 kilometers from the nearest town, which is a tiny town. So you probably need about $100 million plus road just to get that project kind of to where it needs to be in terms of accessibility. So great asset, but very remote, and it can be very, very expensive to build that one out. But I think it will happen because the world is going to need the tungsten from that project. Pilot Mountain, it's different. We have roads, we have power, we have water, we have nearby towns. All those big capex items are kind of check. So we're in a unique position. Like I said, I fortunately can't really name a ton of Western world assets that we can compare ourselves to, but we know the value of what we have in the ground right now. We've obviously run the numbers in the back of the napkin to understand what this could look like economically if we just put it into production today. But the exploration here is, I'm not going to swear, but it's fantastic. I got in trouble for swearing last time on Twitter, so I won't do that again. But the exploration upside is fantastic. I mean, we talked about discovering a porphyry at Garfield. Well, what if we discovered a porphyry at Pilot Mountain? What would that do to our share price? And the reality is we have 4 skarn deposits at surface, which are all identical in terms of alteration and mineralization, but no one's ever found the porphyry. And when you find a skarn, there's a porphyry. That's just geologically, you cannot have a skarn without a porphyry causing all the fluid flow. So there's a porphyry somewhere. It may be on our property. It may not be. I don't know. But there is 2 porphyry targets, which we have identified on Pilot Mountain. I encourage everyone to look at our presentation and you'll see the bullseye anomaly. We're talking about these bullseye anomalies that we're looking for at Garfield. Well, there's actually a bullseye perfectly on our ground at Pilot Mountain that's never been drilled. So just leave that. I'll leave that with people. But that could put this into a completely league of its own if we can find the cause of the porphyry, which is what we're looking to do with the drilling that we're going to be doing in the next couple of, well, I won't say when it's going to start, but I've talked about the timelines, when permitting comes in, the drilling contract being signed, so everyone knows that that's certainly coming quite quickly here.
Indeed, good stuff. Good stuff. And we haven't actually spoken about garnet, have we? I know it's not that sexy, maybe, but I think it's quite cool. And we did that interview, and you told me all about the garnet. I was quite excited about that. What are you pushing the potential of the garnet at Pilot Mountain?
Absolutely. That's moving forward in tandem. All the drill holes that we do, we're going to be fully analyzing for garnet now. There's visual logs for the garnet from the previous drilling, but in order to tie the garnet into a future economic study, we need to do a different assay technique to really start to quantify that. So yes, it's fully in our job drawer. We are working with consultants right now to start to really understand that. We know roughly, quantifiably what that opportunity looks like, but now we really need to start locking in some terms here. So that's going to be pushing forward. So everything we're doing now going forward, it's not like we're just focused on the copper or we're just focused on we're focused on everything. That's the beauty of this project, is all of that, all the details, the garnet, the copper, the silver, the zinc, the tungsten, it's all going to tie into what the economics of this project ultimately look like. So we are working around the clock with different consultants to understand what all of these things are going to contribute. And then ultimately we're looking to quantify that with the work that we're doing going forward. So we're looking at everything, and the garnet is certainly a priority because there could be a lot of value to unlock here once we start to understand what's there and how we kind of process it.
Okay. Well, I don't see any hands up in the group here, but please, if you do have a question, want to ask it, do put your hand up. I did see one question was typed in the main group, and again, you can always type there if you'd like. But I'll just ask this question, and if that's all we've got, then that suggests that Oliver informed shareholders very well, and everyone's quite happy, I hope. So well done, Oliver. But this last question here, maybe it's a good one to finish with, actually, because it says, what is your 2 to 3 year first prize vision on Pilot Mountain? And we've talked a little bit about the joint venture idea, but the question goes on: are you aiming to bring in a joint venture major on board, take it from a de-risked resource to a fully working mine, and just take royalty payments, or is it more a case of bringing contractors in to do the work and manage the whole development in-house?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're commercial and open-minded. I'm just looking to return the most I can to my shareholders. My goal here, and the way I see this playing out, if we are successful in achieving the various things, is we spend the next, let's just call it 2 years, advancing the asset, de-risking it, working towards some sort of bankable economic study, whether that's PFS or FS, that we can then say, okay, this project is worth X. Here is the net present value of this asset. Because once you have that value, that number, then there's a very clear outcome to selling the project for a multiple of that value. So I don't know what that number is going to be until we do the necessary work. We have a rough idea based on back of the napkin. I can assure you it's a lot more than what we're trading at now, is the number that we kind of think this could get to. But the garnet, like I said, the copper, the silver, the zinc, the tungsten, all is going to play into this, what the pricing does. But just to answer that question, we want to spend the next 2 years de-risking this, adding a significant amount of value. We think we can do that with the drill bit and drilling some of these targets which have never been tested before. I mean, one drill hole into one of these targets, if we find what we hope is there, we could be doubling, tripling the resource at Pile Mountain quite quickly with if we are successful, and the porphyry as well. I mean, that's potentially the biggest prize altogether. So continuing to look at unlocking those kind of different treasure boxes and seeing what all these different targets lead us to. All the while we're pushing forward what we currently have. As I mentioned, we're de-risked here, and your floor valuation is really tied to what we have already defined at Pilot Mountain. So with that in the ground, we can push that forward. We can have the conversation with the U.S. government, look at ways at advancing that resource to production, all the while looking for those big punchy valuation uplifts with drilling. So do that over the next 2 years. Really look to increase the size of the resource in the ground, de-risk it, answer a lot of those important questions, and then ultimately sell this to a diversified U.S. mining company for a significant premium to what we can stamp as the economic value. That's what I'm looking to do here.
Okay, great. A question here, I think it might be tongue-in-cheek. Please, can you show us your napkin, the back of it? I don't know what that means. Obviously you do if you're laughing. So.
No, because it's a back of the napkin calculation that we've done.
Sorry. Of course. Oh, yeah. Obviously. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's the UK version of back of the napkin, which is what we have. And you just picture the way it came about is just picturing geologists in a diner after drilling some holes.
Yeah. Okay.
And trying to figure out what this is all worth or what could be worth. So, unfortunately, I can't share the back of my napkin. But what I can say is, once we have something that's 43101 compliant, that I hopefully matches or somewhat resembles what's the back of my napkin, then we could put that out, and that will be the value we can attribute and talk about in the market. But great question. Good. It's worth a try. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Of course, it's always worth a try. I don't see any other questions, so I think everyone's happy. I'll just finish off by saying thank you very much, Oliver. And what can perhaps shareholders expect? Can we expect quite a nice summer? Not weather-wise. I mean, activity. Well, both, and nice to have good weather and also some good and lots of news flow from gold and metal.
I mean, this will be the busiest 6 months of the company's history, and that's probably saying something. I mean, people might joke and say, "Well, you've been around for a year." Well, look at what we've done in a year, and I'm telling you, this will be the busiest 6 months. And then the 6 months after that will probably be even busier than the next 6 months. So we're ramping up here. This is the growth stage now. We've built important building blocks. We've made a name for ourselves in the market. We've measured 2 times on a lot of different things here, and this is when I think things get exciting. So I'm excited. I'm obviously thrilled now, having the cash in the bank. Having a lot of the important kind of things that we're working on in the background starting to really take hold here allows me to focus on drilling and really adding value here. So it's going to be busy. Don't sleep on it. I'll just put it that way. We have everything we've done so far has been what we've said we were going to do. We are truly aligned with shareholders. And I think given a lot of news out in the last couple of weeks here, that is probably the most important takeaway is we are aligned. And that's not just lip service. I mean, just look at our press releases, look at what we're doing here. And that's the proof is in the pudding. So you want to be invested in companies where you wake up and you're excited when 7 o'clock hits, not you're fearing for your life because something might have gone. Granted, a lot of the things are out of my control and nothing's ever going to be perfect. But as long as your CEO and management team is going to bat for shareholders every day, then the odds are obviously stacked in your favor. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that helps.
That 7 o'clock, AM is the excitement of getting up in the morning to read the 7 a.m.s on a company that you follow. Yes, it's something we all live for. Well, thank you so much, Oliver, for your time today. Of course, Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. I hope that's covered everything that people were thinking of. And I'm sure we're speaking again soon, Oliver. But for now, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the time, Mark. That was really insightful and hopefully helpful. And as always, I encourage everyone to reach out to me. I love chatting to shareholders or interested parties, and I can answer any further questions. I can't show you the back of my napkin, but we can certainly have another chat.
Great. Well, thank you everyone as well for listening. And until next time, have a good day.
Okay, cheers.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.